Assalamalaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. In the name of Allah Subhantallah, the most kind, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Welcome back, fellas. Today we are going to be talking about how to do a type 1 advantage and disadvantage essay, right? So a quick recapitulation of what we discussed in the last video was the discussion essay, right? So like I said, you are going to be given a topic, you have to discuss two different views regarding it, and then you have to give your opinion, right? It's best to give it in the form of 5-paragraph structure, right? So you have number one, the introduction, right? That is basically you talking about your general statement. You paraphrase the background question statement, then you talk about the thesis statement, the same old drill, right? Then you have your second paragraph, that is body paragraph 1. You introduce the first idea, you explain it, you give an example, then you close it, right? Then third paragraph will be body paragraph 2. You introduce the idea, you explain it, give an example, close it, and then the fourth, so basically the first idea is you talking about the first view, and the second idea is you talking about the second view, right? Now the fourth paragraph, which happens to be body paragraph 3, that's where your opinion comes in, right? Now I understand the fact that it's tempting to maintain diplomacy. There are a lot of life instances where you have to be diplomatic, right? So for example, there's that debate, right? Should you be a good human being and a bad worker at the workplace, or can you be good worker and a bad human being at the workplace, right? I mean, the fact that there's going to be a worker who's going to focus on his task. He might not be the kindest of people, right? But same time, you have someone who is not that good in terms of getting the job done, right? He is trying to learn, but he's very he's very elegant, he's very well mannered, he's a thorough gentleman, right? At the end of the day, what would you prefer, right? Now you would say, I personally feel that you can be a good human being as well as a good worker in terms of getting the job done, in terms of submitting to what are the necessary metrics of evaluation ordained by the top management, right? But unfortunately, this is one of those cases where we sometimes have to bite the bullet and accept the fact that it's good to stick with one view, right? So just views that stickering it, just make sure you introduce a new reason, a new perspective, because like I said before, the examiners, right, they don't like repetitions, okay? You make sure to give an original example based on your own knowledge, based on your own experience. Some people say that, can we fabricate an example where nothing comes in our mind? Though I would say that, use your brain. I'm sure you're going to come up with something, inshallah. But if you're not, just make sure that it's sensible, okay? Just make sure that, it has some element of logic and rationality behind that. Now, that being said, then obviously in the end, you have the conclusion, in which you summarize both the main ideas and their respective reasons, okay? Keeping it short, to the point, and professional. Now, today we're going to be talking about type 1 advantages and disadvantages essays. जिसमें फॉर एग्जांपल मिसाल के तौर पे बात करें, मैं आपको एक टॉपिक देता हूँ, फॉर एग्जांपल, राइट, ऑनलाइन लर्निंग, राइट, ऑनलाइन एजुकेशन, especially in the aftermath of this global pandemic COVID-19. They'll tell you that online education has become the new norm in today's world in the aftermath of COVID. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of this approach, right? So in this case, I would recommend a 4-paragraph structure, right? Once again, these are recommendations, okay? Baki jo follow, based on my experience, mera kaam hai samjhana, baki, it's totally up to you fellas, right? So a type 1 advantage or disadvantage aise mein kya hota hai ki aapke ek 4-paragraph structure hota hai, right? You have a 4-paragraph structure. The first one is going to be introduction. Introduction talk about 3 things: the general statement, you paraphrase the background question statement, and you give your thesis statement, right, that directly addresses. So in this case, a thesis statement would be, over the course of this essay, I will explain how this is the advantage and how this is the disadvantage. Whatever the pro and con is, just stated, okay? Just stated in the opening paragraph, okay? That being said and done, then you talk about your second paragraph, that is body paragraph 1. So your first idea can be the advantage, okay? It could be the advantage, it could be the disadvantage, just follow the chronological order, depends on what they ask first in the question statement, right? So mention the advantage, then why do you think that is the case, explain the reasoning, use some detailed description, then you can give a concrete example based on your own knowledge or experience, and finally you can give the closing statement, yeah? After that, you have your third paragraph, that is body paragraph 2, in which you could, let's say you talked about the advantage in body paragraph 1, then in this case, your body paragraph 2 is going to be you stating the disadvantage, you explain the reasoning behind it, you give a closing statement, then you're giving, example, and then followed by the closing statement, right? The closing statement is important. It's good to close a paragraph on a good note, because when you're transitioning from one paragraph to the other, the continuity needs to be there. The coherence band scripture needs to be justified in full letter and spirit. Thank you. And finally, you have your fourth and final paragraph, in this case being the conclusion, in which once again you summarize the advantage, the disadvantage, and the respective reasonings, okay, while making sure you don't introduce any new perspective in the final paragraph. So that being said and done, let's move on to our let's move on to a sample type 1 advantage and disadvantages that I prepared that I would like to demonstrate, and hopefully after that it becomes a bit more doable for you. So let's begin. I think this should be good enough. Yep. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Type 1 advantage and disadvantages essay. Question. In some countries, young people are encouraged to work or travel for a year between finishing high school and starting university studies. Okay. In some countries, young people are encouraged to work or travel for a year between finishing high school and starting university studies. Discuss the advantages and disadvantages for young people who decide to do this. Discuss the advantages and disadvantages for young people who try to do this. Give reasons for your answer and include any relevant examples from your own knowledge or experience. Write at least 250 words. Okay. So what's happening is there's a debate as in whether people should proceed for the higher studies straight away after high school, or should they take out a year, get some work experience, get some necessary practical and technical expertise under their belt, maybe, give themselves more time, like they say, chill out, right? Do some of that stuff, right? And, go for those sort of things. So we have to talk about the pros and cons of this model, right? So obviously also we look at the instructions. You have to give reasons for example and include any relevant examples from your own knowledge or experience. Write at least 250 words, okay? Write at least 250 words. Now, first of all, we talk about the jump statement, right? The main topic of discussion, our introduction, which is the first paragraph. This is what I've written, right? Let's look at it. The debate over whether or not young people should allocate or reserve a year after high school completion to meet their traveling and work objectives before gravitating towards university studies continues to generate rigorous momentum. The debate over whether or not young people should allocate a year after high school completion to meet their traveling and work objectives before gravitating towards university studies continues to generate rigorous momentum. All right. Then after that, fellas, what do we do? Now that we're done with the general statement, we have to paraphrase this background question statement. The best way to paraphrase, and this is where your test of paraphrasing, is being conducted, right? The best way to paraphrase it is to break it down the statement into different parts and find suitable synonyms for each part, right? In some countries, you have in a few nations, and then instead of young people, you say the budding echelons, as in the growing or the flourishing or the rising ranks or components of the society. Are encouraged to work or travel for a year. They're strongly recommended to travel or do a job for 12 months after completing their high school studies. Prior, that is before the inception is beginning of the university studies. University studies isn't the same as tertiary education, right? So you can take 1, 2, or 3 words, but please don't copy paste the entire sentence. The more words you can bring in, the more synonyms you can swap, the better it is going to be. So in a few nations, the budding echelons of the society are strongly recommended to travel or do a job for 12 months after the completion of high school studies prior to the inception of their tertiary education. Now, obviously, what is the plus point of it, right? Let's say हम holiday के perspective से देखें, right? You're giving out time for, boosting your physical and mental health, right? You're traveling, you're going to meet around people, you're going to be more active, give yourself some time to recharge yourself, right? So, but obviously, let's just focus more on the work aspect, okay? So obviously, the work aspect would be that you will be, obviously, if you're working, you'll be saving money, right? Provided you don't, waste it all away on some other things, right? So you're saving money. And once you're saving money, right, what happens is that obviously you're in a better position to fund your future educational ventures. And more importantly, you will be having some significant skill sets underneath your belt. Yeah. So over the course of this essay, we will explain how saving money is the biggest advantage of this approach and how a reduced motivation to study is a primary disadvantage, right? So obviously motivation aapki thodi bahut girti hai. This is something that I faced at the start of my academic year in University of Stockholm, where I'm currently doing my master's in advanced chemical engineering. Yeah. So I did my undergrad in chemical engineering from Ghulam Azad University in 2018. Then went back to Lahore, did some I did some different jobs, right? And the thing is that even though, yep, the experience was important, obviously the pay scale and all that was thing. But from an academic perspective, when I came here, it did take me a while to get going, right? And if you compare that to someone, who did 4 years of study and then, just took a couple of months to, hit the reset button, then went back again and higher study mode, right? The continuity factor would have been there, right? Like we talk about from an IELTS perspective, right? Coherence factor उनके लिए उस case में ज़्यादा होगा, right? So obviously to some extent आपकी motivation गिरती है, no doubt about that, but that being said, right, you have to get back in the game, right? That ultimately you have a bad day, you have to get over it. You have a bad couple of months, you have to get over them. So inshallah you will. So, but anyways, from the perspective of IELTS, so over the course of this essay, we are introducing the thesis statement. We are just stating what the advantages, we're stating what the disadvantages. Once again, I must repeat, ladies and gentlemen, you are most welcome to have your own stance on the matter, okay? This is just a suggestion from mine, yes, but just introduce the advantage and disadvantage without elaborating, without going in detail, because that is ultimately what the body paragraphs are there for. So over the course of this essay, we will explain how saving money is the biggest advantage of this approach and how a reduced motivation to study is the primary disadvantage. All right, so we have talked about the general statement, we have done the paraphrasing, we have introduced our ideas in the thesis statement, introduction, first paragraph done and dusted, right? Now, what did they say first? They said first talk about the advantages, okay? They said talk about the advantages. So in our second paragraph, that is body paragraph 1, we'll introduce the first idea, in this case being the advantage that I established above, that you are saving money, okay? Saving money is the ultimate pro of this trajectory, as in that is the ultimate plus point of this approach. Humne introduced the idea, now we have to explain the reasoning, okay? Third level education is very expensive, and lots of students decide to work for 12 months and save up money before they begin the university studies. This allows them to pay for the living costs, tuition fees, and accommodation, and focus on their studies rather than struggle financially or rack more burden on their shoulders by juggling a part-time job in parallel with their academic work, which is anything but easy, right? It's ultimately, it tests you, right? It builds character, okay? It rewards you with a lot once you get going, but initiating it, it's anything but easy. Saying that from experience. Additionally, traveling and working for a year gives them time to reflect on their academic and career trajectories, recharge their mental batteries, and do more research on their future field of study. Then, so this is us having given our reasoning, okay, that university education is expensive and you have to save money to fund them. Not everyone comes from a very privileged background, but we all be thankful to the grace of Allah Subhantallah for what we have. And obviously when you save money, it allows you to pay for your living costs, tuition fees, accommodation, and obviously when you're traveling and working, you also take out more time for yourself every now and then, to recharge yourself before you go back into the deep one more time. Yeah. Now we give an example to further back up and reinforce the school of thought. For example, the Times reported that the average student at a UK university requires over $12,000 per annum just to survive, and many drop out because they cannot afford to stay. I repeat, for example, the Times report that the average student at a UK university requires over $12,000 per annum just to survive, and many drop out because they cannot afford to stay. Okay, so we have given the idea, we have explained the reasoning, we have talked about the example. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do is we are going to close it. Yeah. Therefore, the option of working for a year before starting university studies is an economically feasible approach that ultimately pays them dividends. Therefore, the option of working for a year before starting university studies is an economically feasible approach that ultimately pays them dividends. Now, ultimately pays them dividends means ultimately helps them back a lot of reward. Next up, okay, we talk about the disadvantages. Okay, we are done and dusted with our second paragraph. Now we come to third paragraph, body paragraph 2, where we talk about the second idea, that is primarily the disadvantage. So first of all, right, we introduce the idea, talk about the disadvantage. So despite these advantages, this approach carries a glaring drawback, a big negative angle in the form of reduced motivation to study. Okay, then we talk about how does this happen, the reasoning factor, right? Let's describe it a bit. So many students, right? Many students often get used to working or traveling and don't want to return to a life of study. Many students often get used to working or traveling and don't want to return to a life of study. This short-term view can cause some to bypass university altogether and gravitate towards menial jobs that are beneath their capabilities and may not offer the same prospects that the future higher education might have done. This short-term view can cause some to bypass university altogether and gravitate towards menial jobs that are beneath their capabilities and may not offer the same prospects that the future higher education might have done. All right. Then we can give an example. For example, a recent survey by the British government found that 26% of students who take a gap year never entered the field of tertiary education again. For example, a recent survey by the British government found that 26% of students who take a gap year never entered the field of tertiary education. All right. Therefore, we can give a closing statement. Hence, this approach could stunt, bring stagnancy, bring an element of redundancy, right? This approach could stunt their academic and career trajectories, causing them to lose their momentum and rhythm in the field of higher education. This approach could stunt their academic career trajectories, causing them to lose their momentum and rhythm in the field of higher education. Also, working for a year means that such students will often be lagging by a year or two as compared to their high school peers, which could depress them and unleash, that is, release an onslaught, an incoming wave of mental health issues upon them, making it all the more difficult for them to study. Okay, and on the last one, fellas, this is a very important thing. Okay, don't ever compare yourselves to someone else. Yes, I know for a fact that competition makes you better. Okay, healthy competition is good, right? You should give yourself daily goals, daily performance targets, right? It's very good to have a mentor. It's very good to have a facilitative, friend, who can try to bring out the best in you, right, from a professional angle. But at the end of the day, remember, your ultimate competition is with yourself. Okay, you need to dig deep and ask yourself what you can do daily on a day-to-day basis, and as long as it's in sync with the natural order, right? Trust me, you're gonna do great. Okay, you're gonna rock it. All right, just believe in yourself. So that being said and done, we have also closed the paragraph. Okay, so I hope you have understood introducing the advantage, explaining the reasoning behind the disadvantage, giving an example based on knowledge or experience, and then adding the closing statement. Now, that being said and done, next up we finally going to end up concluding it, right? So in conclusion, the debate over this sensitive issue continues to fragment the masses into two schools of thought which lie on opposite ends of the spectrum. In conclusion, the debate over the sensitive issue continues to fragment the masses into two schools of thought which lie on opposite ends of the spectrum. Taking a break from studies can be advantageous if it allows people to gather up savings and do more research. Taking a break from studies can be advantageous or beneficial or very feasible or very good for us, very desirable for us, if it allows people to gather up savings and do more research on their academic field of interest in the long run. However, they should be careful that it does not lead to disillusionment with education altogether. All right, so this is our conclusion. So I'm going to read it one more time at a stretch, and then we'll move on to our miscellaneous drill for the day of quotes, spellings, and idioms with meanings and sentences. So, question. In some countries, young people are encouraged to work or travel for a year between finishing high school and starting university studies. Discuss the advantages and disadvantages for young people who decide to do this. Give reasons for your answer and include any relevant examples from your own knowledge or experience. Write at least 250 words. First paragraph. The debate or whether or not young people should allocate a year after high school completion to meet their traveling and work objectives before gravitating towards university studies continues to generate rigorous momentum. In a few nations, the budding echelons of the society are strongly recommended to travel or do a job for 12 months after the completion of high school studies prior to the inception of their tertiary education. Over the course of this essay, we will explain how saving money is the biggest advantage of this approach and how a reduced motivation to study is a primary disadvantage. Over the course of this essay, we will explain how saving money is the biggest advantage of this approach and how a reduced motivation to study is the primary disadvantage. First paragraph. All right. Second paragraph. Saving money is the ultimate pro of this trajectory. Third level education is very expensive, and lots of students decide to work for 12 months and save up money before they begin the university studies. This allows them to pay for the living costs, tuition fees, and accommodation, and focus on their studies rather than struggle financially or rack more burden on their shoulders by juggling a part-time job in parallel with their academic work. Additionally, traveling and working for a year gives them time to reflect on their academic and career trajectories recharge the mental batteries, and do more research on the future field of study. For example, the Times reported that the average student at a UK university requires over $12,000 per annum just to survive, and many drop out because they cannot afford to stay. Therefore, the option of working for a year before starting university studies is an economically feasible approach that ultimately pays them dividends. Next up, despite these advantages, this approach carries a glaring drawback in the form of reduced motivation to study. Many students often get used to working or traveling and don't want to return to a life of study. The short-term view can cause some to bypass university altogether and gravitate towards petty, insignificant, trivial, or menial jobs that are beneath their capabilities and may not offer the same prospects that the future higher education portfolios might have done. For example, a recent survey by the British government found that 26% of students who take a gap year never entered the field of tertiary education. Hence, this approach could stunt their academic and career trajectories, cause them to lose their momentum and rhythm in the field of higher education. Also, working for a year means that such students will often be lagging by a year or two as compared to their high school peers, which could depress them and unleash an onslaught of mental health issues upon them, making it all the more difficult for them to study. In conclusion, the debate over this sensitive issue continues to fragment the masses into two schools of thought, which lie on opposite ends of the spectrum. Taking a break from studies can be advantageous if it allows people to gather up savings and do more research on their academic field of interest in the long run. However, they should be careful that it does not lead to disillusionment with education altogether. So I really hope that after this, discussion, you're finding it a tad bit more easier and doable. And obviously, once again, I would love your queries and suggestions, in the comment section, so that I could use the impetus, for enhancing my own, development, and also understanding what basically the needs of the prospective students who are watching my channel, what the needs of the audience are, and how I could ultimately, make those sustainable improvements to enhance your the lesson that you take out of this, out of this auspicious movement. Jazakallah. Now, that being said, down, we are gonna move on to our miscellaneous drill. Okay, so first of all, we're gonna start with our 10 spellings. Okay, so today's spellings: number one, you have hegemony. Number two, you have invertebrates. So hegemony is Hegemony. All right, today's spellings are a tad bit more what you call challenging. Okay, and in meanings, I want you to find it out. Okay, based on the template that I've been giving to you so far and counting, inshallah. So number one, your spelling is hegemony. 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 Number two, you have invertebrates. 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 Number three, you have indictment. 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 Number four, you have purgatory. 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 Number five, you have redemption. Redemption. Right? Just like Red Dead Redemption, right? The PS3 game. Number six, you have beguiling. 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 Right? Number seven, you have animosity. 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 Number eight, you have valedictorian. 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 Number nine, you have repulsion. 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 Number 10, you have crocodile. 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 So this is our these are spellings for today. Next up, we move on to our words with meanings and sentences. There you go. So we have 5 words for today, fellas. The first word is going to be dissimulation. Dissimulation, right? Dissimulation is basically an act of hiding the real feelings or intentions with a pretension. Okay, to pretend something, whereas in reality you're feeling something, or you're thinking about someone from a perspective that is totally opposite or 180 degrees to what you are, presenting at face value. So dissimulation, dissimulation. Dissimulation is basically an act of hiding the real feelings or intentions with a pretension. All right, the sentence: the monarch was capable of great dissimulation and hypocrisy. The monarch was capable of great dissimulation and hypocrisy. The second word for today was averse. Averse. Averse basically means to be opposed to, To develop a strong disliking for someone or something. To develop a strong disliking for someone or something. So a sentence is going to be, some MPs, some members of parliament are averse or they are totally against the media spotlight and go to great lengths to conceal their abilities. Some members of parliament are averse to the media spotlight and go to great lengths to conceal their abilities. Okay. This is very important. You need to, fellas, we need to learn to resist the camera, right? It's very contagious, right? But the moment you're exposed to it, you just feel like going towards it more and more and more and more. Okay. If you talk about the former cricketer, Andrew Simons, may rest in peace, right? A brilliant all-rounder, one of the greatest match winners that the world of cricket ever saw, a man with a short but a highly lustrous career, right? And I always, as someone, aspiring to be a cricketer, right, I always hold him in regard when it comes to the importance of staying away from the spotlight and making sure that you focus on your own personal performance. Inshallah, it's going to be a very, very satisfying ordeal for you in that regard. So averse means to be against something. Some MPs are averse to the media spotlight and go to great lengths to conceal their abilities. Then number 3, you have voracity. So voracity basically means to exhibit or to show an excessive desire to eat. So voracity, voracity, exhibiting an excessive desire to eat. So for example, a sentence could be, on reaching the ship, the survivors were offered some bread, which they devoured with a voracious appetite, which they ate with a voracious appetite. Okay, so voracity just means typically to have an extreme level of hunger. And then number 4, you have veracity. Okay, so you just swap the O with the E. Okay, so sometimes changing one alphabet leads to considerable amendment or modification in the meaning of a respective word. Okay, that is something that we have to be very aware and vigilant about. So veracity basically means the quality of being honest, true, or accurate. Okay, the veracity of the second claim can be tested against the findings of archaeology. The veracity of the second claim can be tested against the findings of archaeology. Then number 5 is ordinance. ordinance, ordinance, right? A rule or law made by a government or authority. A rule or law made by a government or authority, right? Pervez Musharraf institutionalized corruption via the introduction of 3 devised policies: plea bargain, voluntary return of money, and the National Reconciliation Ordinance, aka NRO, right? The former Prime Minister Imran Khan ने अक्सर इस reference दिया था अपनी speeches में. तो these are 5 words for today: dissimulation, averse, veracity, as well as ordinance. Thank you. Moving on to the final drill of the day, that is 5 idioms with meanings and sentences. So you have the first idiom for today, that is to burn the candle at both ends. Okay, the first idiom, that is to burn the candle at both ends. So it means to work excessively hard. It means to work excessively hard, right? Then your sentence is going to be, Mitch is burning the candle from both ends. He is working 2 jobs, one in the morning and the other one in the evening. Mitch is burning the candle from both ends. He is working 2 jobs, one in the morning and the other one in the evening. Then you have your second idiom for the day, and that is to separate the wheat from the chaff. Sorry, to separate the wheat from the chaff. chaff. Separate the wheat from the chaff basically means to separate something valuable from something worthless. Okay, to separate something valuable from something worthless. The new testing procedures to evaluate employees will separate the wheat from the chaff. The new testing procedures to evaluate employees will separate the wheat from the chaff. Then you have number 3, that is change tune. You have the third idiom for today, that is change tune. Change tune basically means to change the way one behaves with others from good to bad. Change tune basically means to change the way one behaves with others from good to bad. So basically a sentence is going to be, after he came to know that I'm close to the power in the organization, he changed his tune. After he came to know that I'm close to the power in the organization, he changed his tune. Change tune basically means to, shift something, right? And it's often taken in a negative sense, right? So after he know that I'm close to the power in the organization, he changes tune, right? Number 4, to run around in circles. To run around in circles means to be active without achieving any worthwhile result. Okay, I mean, obviously, a circle, right? It has many depictions associated with it, right? You have the circle of life, right? Something that is exemplified in that saying, right? Tough times create strong men create good times create weak men create tough times, right? And the circle of life approach has also been illustrated in that movie of Lion King, also. But in this case, to run around in circles basically means to be active without achieving any sort of worthwhile result. To be active without achieving any sort of worthwhile result. So a sentence could be, he ran around in circles trying to bring us on board for the new cause. He ran around in circles trying to bring us on board for the new cause. He ran around in circles trying to bring us on board for the new cause. And the fifth and final idiom for today is to turn the clock back. To turn the clock back. To turn the clock back basically means to return to an earlier time period. To return to an earlier time period, right? Turning the clock back to our glory days is fruitless. We have got to work harder and smarter in the present. Turning the clock back to our glory days is fruitless. We've got to work harder and smarter in the present, right? An approach that is also a saying that has also been mirrored by Allama Iqbal saying, right? इंसान माजी की आहें बढ़ते मुस्तकबिल की हवाई के लिए तामीर करते मगर हाल का कोई नहीं सोचता. So we have to live in the present, right? And that, I mean, that's the reality of life, fellas. Okay, no one is perfect. Okay, even I'm in the same boat as the rest of you, but we can take out a leaf from the books of all the other great fellas, morally pious and stalwarts of the community, right? And hopefully we can try to emulate them and like I said, compete with yourself in a healthy way. Slow and steady wins the race. So that being said, done. Thank you very much. Jazakallah khair. And I hope that you found this session productive. Please do not hesitate to DM me your queries. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, I'm all ears for that. Okay, fellas. That being said, you all take care, and inshallah, see you very soon in the next session, in which we're going to talk about one more type of essay. We'll probably look at the type 2 advantage and disadvantage essay, and hopefully have a crack at type 3 as well in the same class. Thank you very much, and all the best. Assalamalaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.